Welcome to the Pie Guy Podcast with your host, Matt Walker.
Welcome, everyone, to the Pie Guy Podcast. My name is Matt Walker. I'm your host, and I am here with Adam Martin, a very good friend of mine, a longtime sports designer. But one of my main things for today, especially, is the Maker of Sports podcast, which to me was a legendary design podcast. I know a lot of other designers in the industry really relied on it. So I wanted Adam to be one of my first. Actually, I wanted him to be the first. We just couldn't get the schedules to sync, but I wanted him to be one of my first guests just because that was my first podcast guesting on it. It probably started my love for podcasts and his podcast in general. I learned so much about design. And so, Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on here. I think it's cool you're doing a podcast. Obviously, I did one for many, many years. It's an interesting medium to get into. And, you and I have had conversations for years over text and even in person at various conferences and whatnot. And, I think we hit it off. And, I think you have the gift to gab a little bit. So, you should make a good podcaster.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely have the gift of gab, I would say. But that's actually been the thing I was surprised about is, a lot of these podcasts are kind of going more into just conversation than learning. And I was worried about that, but people are like, no, that's, we're enjoying that part. So I'm just going to keep it nice and free. But I've been picking your brain for everyone who's listening. I've been picking his brain from the beginning of, what to do. And I know a lot's changed even in the few years you've been out, but do you miss the podcast? Do you miss doing it?
Honestly, I miss the meeting of people and the people aspect of it and the conversations that happen around it. All of the work that went with it, it was a little tough, right? Like, you're learning as you go. Like doing a podcast is not that easy. I mean, you have to kind of prepare for the guests. You have to set up the guests. You got to work schedules. There's like a whole that side of things, and then there's the releasing of it, whether you're making social media assets or you're posting to things, and it can scale into a project that just gets bigger and bigger. But there was something about Makers of Sport that really I liked sort of identifying with. I liked going to places and be like, oh, that's the Makers of Sport guy. Like you felt like you had something to kind of like a flag to fly, so to speak. And I liked that flag was basically something I created, as opposed to like if you work for a company, you're flying their flag, or, even in the freelance world a little bit, it's kind of weird because you're working with so many different clients and you kind of don't feel like you have a flag to fly either. Like what we always used to joke at like some of those like creative conferences. It's like, what table do you sit at? Right. Like that table over there is like the Falcons and that table over there is, and it's like, all these freelancers just sat at the table in the back, because it's like we didn't have like a whole table of people. But yeah, I mean, as far as missing it, the project itself, no, but absolutely the people.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing I'm learning here is that, I love talking to people anyway, but this just gives me a reason to reach out and talk in depth to people. Most of these are just conversations I'd have anyway. Because, you and I have gotten on the phone and we'll talk for an hour. We won't even think about it because we have a lot in common anyway. I mean, between sports and, we were just talking about our kids' sports, which is just a whole other thing. But between that and then design and then, you and I have talked offline a bunch of times about maybe seeing some of the things that people have done online or said online. And we're like, is this person crazy? So we always seem to have stuff to talk about, but how many episodes did you end up getting in?
Oh, dude. Off the top of my head, I can't even remember. I'm going to have to like look that up now. It was over 100. So I got to 114 public, but there were some like offshoot episodes. If you remember, I did the community and I don't know the actual number because there were some like sort of quote unquote private episodes that I would do with just community members. So, probably 130-ish range, I would say. Yeah.
That's a great run.
Yeah, it had a good run, man. I did it for about 6 years or so. And, I the people were great. And one thing I found tough was like people would move on, right? And so like that one episode from like 4 years ago, that person's now worked at 2 or 3 other companies. But now the actual content itself, like the quality of what they were saying still was relevant, right? Because it was mostly career-based stuff or like strategy, design strategy based things or whatever. And like the stories were still cool too, right? Like the stories about walking down a tunnel with one particular team or whatever. But that was just a small part of their career. And I think it just kind of ran its course, right? Like I think that was just, it was something when I started, I thought, oh, I'll do this forever, and then you do something for a while and you're just like, yeah, I'm just not as passionate about it anymore. And here was the thing on the people side of things. I did not want to bring someone on a podcast if I myself was like really like melancholy about the conversation, just because like the work side of it, I didn't want to be there, right? Like I wanted those people to have a platform, to have real true interest. And I did have real true interest, but sometimes I would just be thinking about like, oh man, I've got to edit it. I've got to do this. And, we were just talking a minute ago before I got on here, right? Like this software you're using wasn't available when I started doing my thing. The podcasting industry itself has changed so much. There's better equipment. There's better entry level equipment. There was like no entry level equipment when I started. Like this mic itself is too this is like, what Joe Rogan uses, right? Like, so this is something you shouldn't have to purchase to get into podcasting. But, like I did some investing over time and upgraded my equipment. But yeah, dude, I mean, I think you hit 114 episodes and, some great stories. And I ended on a good one too, man. This guy named Ali Rahman, who creates this sports templates website.
Oh,
and, yeah. He makes these 3D assets and teams are buying them and acquiring them. And he has such a great story. He's a Syrian war refugee, and he talked about like powering his laptop from a like a car, like a truck battery, because there's like no power, because like living in a war zone, and he's like trying to run a business while like war is happening in his country. It's crazy, man. You start to hear that and you're like, wow, dude, that story, like we think about some of the things we deal with just on a day-to-day basis, which is like, it's really not that big of a deal, man, compared to something like that, and to see that guy go out there and crush it is awesome.
Mentioning Ali, I've used so many of his assets, and I don't know if you see it everywhere. I don't know if you don't see as many people building those sort of template based assets like they used to, but yeah, man, I could use if he's listening, I could use an updated, Cascade Lacrosse, XRS like Pro template tomorrow if you got it. But like, it's funny, like I don't know where the sports world would be without him and a few other people that were making these templated things. But they should just keep making them. I don't know how much money they make, but those things are incredible.
Even just creating that market, right, is impressive, because it's basically, if you think about it, like from like I think you I don't know if it's like a proper business term or whatever, but it's like picks and shovels, right? Like those guys are moving to the gold digging territory, where like you got the people that are actually digging and panning for gold, which is the designers, and they're the picks and shovels guy. They're there to sell you the resources and the equipment that you need to do your job, and that's what that business is. And he does it full time, and I think he last time I talked to him, I think he's doing pretty well.
So the last year or so, I was at ESPN and I was building this database for logos and things like that, and I started going through style guides from big college teams. Like right off the top of my head, I mean not huge, but I mean UNC Charlotte I was looking at, and their entire style guide it's all his templates, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, there's a whole industry on this guy, and I wonder how much he even realizes that
it is crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
And he's a guy that's touched, sort of like not directly, but indirectly touched so many things in sports branding and just sports design as a whole, and probably even outside of sports branding. That like, and people don't even know. He's like the undercover guy that like, who knows who's used this stuff. And if you're in the know, then right? Like you recognize that stuff because you've seen it or you've used it. So I think he has a great thing going. And honestly, like even in even in makers of sport, like there was something always appealing to me about people that took this thing that we do for other people, like creativity, design, or whatever your sort of creative medium is, whether it's like creating videos or that type of animation, stuff like that, and finding a way to do that for yourself and like sell it as an asset. Like to me, that's super cool.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's thinking outside the box on how to make money. And I've always appreciated people that were able to go do that thing, even people that create fonts. I
oh
mean,
god, yeah. And I tried to do these like generic sports based logos. Like I did, bears, tigers, and things like that. And it's hard, man. It's not. I thought, oh, this is easy. People are going to grab them, and they just didn't. It's
yeah,
very hard. It is lightning in a bottle. I think fonts are a perfect example of that. Like, there's some of these fonts, like Red Zone, for example. I've used a bunch, but now you see it everywhere. Some of these guys caught lightning in a bottle, and gals caught lightning in a bottle, but it is hard. It's harder than you think.
yeah.
And you wonder, like, I'm thinking off the top of my head of a couple of people that have made some really nice fonts for the sports world, and you just don't see them. I don't know what they do differently. They're on Creative Market, they're on the same sites, but it's funny. It just you just get hit with it. But it's funny. I'm thinking about those sports templates, and why stop there? I mean, I'm just brainstorming. If he's listening, you could come out with packets like real estate, for example. What if you did a bunch of like brochure pamphlet things in that 3D style, and then you slap the logo, and it's just like,
Yeah.
think of all of that stuff. That's probably 10 times harder to put on a helmet or on a uniform. Like, they should just be doing that for like all these different industries. I bet you they would become like a stock photo superstar because
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm thinking about it off the top of my head. Do you know of anyone that does anything similar like we had in sports like that for other industries?
Like I think the other day I was listening to a podcast and that Chris Do guy was on there from the future, and it looked like he had like some things they were selling, like proposal templates or whatever. Like I think they're like InDesign templates for like
Yeah.
creating proposals. But one of the guys I wanted to shout out is that CJ Zilligan guy. Like he does some
Oh,
really
he's
good work.
amazing. Amazing.
So he, on my day to day, obviously I work at overtime and on the product side, and we've been using one of his fonts forever. And we actually commissioned him recently to do some customizations of that font that we needed for like our scoreboard. And he's great to work with, and he knocked it out for us. And man, like I like to shout that guy out as much as possible because he's been so good to us. And he's got like the his font studio is varsitytype.com.
Yeah, excellent.
So such good work, man, such good work. And to see
Every like
who's
4 or
using it.
5 years, I just write him out of the blue, and I just said, "Hey, I just want you to know, I think you're the best or one of the best." Like,
Oh, and he's
it's
got to be living the dream
so
too. Just
clear,
like
so
small
good.
little
Yeah.
business, making
Yeah.
super cool stuff, doing stuff in,
Yeah.
in sports. And I'm looking at a site right now. You go here and it says his fonts have been used by WWE, NASCAR,
Yeah.
Fox Sports,
Yeah.
Body Armor. I mean, these are major
Oh,
CBS
amazing.
Sports,
Yeah.
major brands, right? So it's
Well,
so
it's
cool.
funny, on one hand, you're like, oh my God, he was used by these major companies. But having worked at those companies, they need fonts just like everybody else. I mean, they don't have a lot of sports based fonts that are good. So if you're at ESPN, they're not making a font. So, of course, if you have a good font, they're going to utilize it.
Oh, absolutely. And you know
Yeah.
what? Also, you have some of these major font companies coming after people. Like, so it's interesting. Like Monotype. I actually like worked with CJ to get a specific contract written with him so that we could use his font. I didn't want to buy it like third party. I was like, I want to go straight. I want CJ to get the money.
Mhm.
Right. So, we went to him. I didn't want to purchase this font third party or whatever, but like if somebody that sells it sees it on the website and they're like, oh, look, we need to see your license for this. It's like, boom, this license came straight from the artist.
Yeah.
We're I'm good. Like you missed me with all that. Right. But yeah, like the licensing aspect of things, it's when you work for these big companies, it's tough, right? I mean, I'm sure like you've kind of had like a dual sort of stint at ESPN, like sort of, like timeline A and timeline B, and I'm sure like nothing's changed as far as like the licensing aspect of things because
no.
to license music, all these things, crazy money
Yeah.
to do that stuff, and you almost wonder like how people are able to to do those things as a small business, or if you're a small like bar and grill, like it's my understanding, if you're like a small bar and grill, like you have to have a license to play music in there or something. I mean, yeah, now people don't, right?
Yeah.
Like they just play their Spotify playlists or whatever. But I think that like legally, people can come to them and be like, hey, you don't have the license to play our stuff in front of an audience or some like random stuff like that. So
It's interesting you say that, because if I think, I don't know about you, but a lot of them have that digital jukebox stuff where you can, access the thing on your phone, which, by the way, that is crack. If I'm in there, like, I'm blowing $30 on that.
Yeah,
right away.
I do that at Waffle House, man.
Oh.
They have them at Waffle House.
Oh my God, Waffle House! You're spending more on the music than you're spending on the food.
Exactly.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Oh, Waffle House. That's the thing. Like we were talking off air. My daughter goes to school in Kentucky, and actually a big part of it was talking to Adam. I had some comfortability with Kentucky because being from New York. I don't know.
Yeah, you didn't know anything about it, right?
No.
I mean, yeah.
I was like, is it at the north? Is it the south? And they're like, yes.
Yeah, I don't think we know that question.
Yeah.
Like, we're such in the middle. Like, people in Louisville are like, oh, we're the Midwest. But if you go elsewhere, like, they're like, oh, we're the South. You know
what's funny when you go there, and I try to explain this to people now because Louisville's a great town.
Mm-hmm.
I said it feels like a Midwestern city, like Indianapolis, in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
it has like similar architecture. It's got that cool like. It almost feels like you're in the Christmas Story movie.
Yeah,
it's got that kind of 50s,
yeah.
30s kind of whatever.
Yeah,
feel.
you think about factories and like
yeah. But then it has a cool like, and didn't even occur to me the Lewis part. It feels like New Orleans. It has like there's like a Cajun thing there, and they got the fleur de lis on things.
Yeah, the fleur de lis on everything up in Louisville.
Yeah, and you go down there and you start to realize like my daughter had like crocodile and Dewey sausage or some. I don't know what it was. I was like, what are you eating? But yeah, there was like some New Orleans kind of style place. So yeah, it has a weird Southern and Midwestern vibe. It's got a little of both. It's really nice.
Yeah. I think I don't know the full history of Louisville, but I think people like move there for work and like Midwest stuff and coming from deep South up there. Same thing with Cincinnati. Honestly, it's like an hour up the road the other way. Or actually, it's like, what is it like? It's I'm trying to think because sometimes I get my bearings crossed because it's like this big triangle. North for me is Cincinnati, and that is just that's like a little bit northeast from Louisville.
Yeah,
and
it's like a 45-degree angle from.
Yeah, and like similar vibes there. Like I know a lot of people moved from the deep South there across the Ohio River, like during like sort of Jim Crow era to get away from things that are happening in the South or whatever. And, it's retained, interestingly enough, a little bit of like Southern culture as far as like food and cuisine. And like, so Cincinnati's another one of those weird towns where it's like, it's in Ohio and nobody considers Ohio the South. Right. But there are some like Southern, like influence, let's say that's whether through like certain types of food or even maybe architecture. Stuff like that. So I
what's like that
for me growing up where I grew up
actually is
just
Buffalo.
like just east of Lexington. I feel like you're almost like you're either a Louisville person or a Cincinnati person as far as like, oh, what's the big city we go to, right? And for me and my family it was always Cincinnati, so I tend to like identify more with like Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, and going to things there. Everybody's Bengals and Reds fans around here, and then like obviously University of Louisville, like we were Kentucky fans, so we didn't really like identify as much going to Louisville. Did you cut out there? Did you lose me for a little bit?
Yes, I did. Sorry, we're having
okay.
We're having a lot of issues today. Like I don't even see your video right now.
Oh, weird.
But let's continue.
I think it did record my part though, so you may.
Oh no, it's still recording.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, sorry for people out there listening. And sorry I cut you over there. What I was going to say is, Buffalo is very much the same way where, Buffalo, nobody thinks of New York as the Midwest, but Buffalo is an hour or two from Pittsburgh. And when you talk to people in Western New York, it's kind of like the Midwest. It's
that is
not
so
really
hard
New
for
York.
me to like grasp conceptually too. Like I'm sure the same thing with you thinking about like Cincinnati, Kentucky, like it's so weird, but I get that too, because it's got that sort of like something about the blue collar vibe, or
Yep.
like, something about it,
Well, and again, like the people will, like, look, everything has a line. Everything is, if you make a map, there's always a line, but it doesn't mean that, the culture stops at the line.
Yes, right.
And there's a lot of people that are very comfortable going back and forth to Pittsburgh or Ohio living in
Yeah.
Buffalo. And I learned that too when I met people from Buffalo, that they would go to college, and they probably would be more likely to go to colleges in that area than they would, say, you know, down in the city in New York or Long
Yeah.
Island or something like that. And
Yep.
it is. Actually, we went on a college trip with my daughter to the St. Bonaventure, which is a small, pretty good
Yep.
Catholic basketball school, and it's out there, not far from Buffalo. And when we were talking, people were like, they're like, yeah, they're like, yeah, it's far from where you are, because it's a far drive, like upstate New York, because there's a lot of it's state forest. You're like, you really can drive a long way, and you're in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, but you think you're in the middle of nowhere? They're like, we're 2 hours from Cleveland. And I was like, Cleveland?
Yeah, that's great.
Like,
yeah.
They're like, yeah. They're like, we go to the Guardians games. We go to whatever. I go, Cleveland?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. Because New York is funny. It's you don't think of it this way, but it is much wider than it is tall.
Yes.
There's a tall part. So if you go right from the base of Manhattan all the way to the top, it can be pretty long. It might be as long as it is wide.
Yeah.
But that's just one line. After that, it all comes down.
So here's what's
weird
crazy. Here's what's crazy. Now that we're like traveling for sports and like this regional league for my older son's soccer, we are in a league called the Great Lakes, and so we play a lot of Michigan teams, a lot of Ohio, Indiana, a little bit of like probably not so much into Missouri, but like the Illinois side of Missouri. But there's another league that there's a team up in Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati areas in, where they actually have a team in Buffalo in their league. So like they'll drive to Buffalo for soccer. And it's like, how far is that? I haven't mapped that, but it feels like that would be crazy. But then you're like, oh, it's like just like not that far outside of Cleveland. And you're like, oh, okay, that's.
But it's funny
nice.
You're saying that, because if you say Great Lakes, I'm thinking Buffalo. Because it's
really? Okay.
Well, see, it's surrounded by it.
Yeah, but that's actually, I think that's what they're called. I think they're in a separate league, but I believe they're in the Great Lakes division of that league. So
because Great Lakes. I mean, I've growing up in New York. We're just surrounded by them, and
I always think Great Lakes is like Northern Ohio, Michigan, but like if you're from other parts of the country, you're going to view that completely differently.
No, but like to me, Great Lakes is like Buffalo over to Michigan, and even Wisconsin.
It goes west of Michigan, right? Yeah, I mean, it's like,
and I've been on Great Lakes in Chicago. I've been on Great Lakes in Wisconsin. I've been on Great Lakes, or at least I believe I have. And then I've actually been in the Great Lakes, in the water. We upstate New York, one of the SUNY schools had this thing called Harbor Fest or something, and they would suspend the drinking laws. And all these colleges would show up there, and literally you would just be drinking in the Great Lake on these rocks. It was amazing. It was like an MTV beach thing. It was ridiculous, but
I'm like somewhat fascinated with the Great Lakes. I actually was like on ChatGPT maybe even a month ago and was like, what are the naval battles that happen in the Great Lakes? Because it's like this weird like internal inland ocean, basically.
One of them is an inland ocean. It's too big. It's like, it's really strange when you're in a lake and you can't see the other side. And it's, look, I live off the Long Island Sound, a little bit off. I can see Long Island from Connecticut. It's not that far. I think it's 15 miles. I mean, it's really not that crazy. And that's the Sound. That's like a major waterway. And then I'm in a lake, and it's nothing. It's so insane to me.
So there was we have a friend. We had to go to an event. It was a soccer event in Rockwell, Illinois, which is like left of Chicago. A friend of mine, his son had to go to the same event. They're from Kentucky, but his family's in Michigan. They were up at like Traverse City, Michigan, which is like way up the north like points of Michigan. And so like we were down left of Chicago, but like kind of north a little bit. And he had to drive all the way down. It took him forever to like circle this, this
Yeah.
lake. And in
Yeah.
reality, like he should have been able to take a boat just like straight
Yeah.
across. Like he got there
I'm
quicker.
surprised, I'm surprised they don't have it. But again, it's such a long distance. Maybe
Yeah.
because again, talking about the Long Island Sound, like it's 15 miles, but it they'll charge $150 for a car ride over.
Yeah.
$150 for you and your family is
That's
insane.
crazy. Yeah.
And by the way, it takes over an hour just to go those 15 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually fun. Whenever you take a ferry, it's kind of fun to go over, but it's so much money. And they always talked about putting a bridge in. I don't know. I think down in Delaware is the one where they have the bridges that go in and under. But yeah, now everyone's against these bridges, and
they go under. They go under the ocean.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Oh yeah. So what is it? It's Cape May, or is it when you're going down to New Jersey? I want to say it's Delaware. When you go down Delaware, you're on a bridge, and you're on a bridge. Look it up. It's cool. It's like it's above water for like 15 miles, and then it goes in the water, and it's under for how long? And then so it's a series of a bridge and then like 2 tunnels or something, or 2 or 3 bridges and 2 or 3 tunnels. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
Man, I think one thing you and I, kind of like going back to some of the design stuff that I feel like sort of hit it off on. And one thing I've always liked about you is a lot of people say sports design and they're like, oh, you design logos. Or at one point it strictly meant that. I remember when I first started getting into design, I worked at a company called Host Communications, which eventually became IMG College, which eventually got acquired. And I think it's just straight up Learfield now. But like I designed game programs and schedule cards and even just like Photoshop UI for like websites of different colleges. And I would not have considered myself a sports designer at that time. I would have considered the guys, you had him on recently, Joe Bosack, right? To me, Joe was a sports designer. He made sports branding. That was sports design. Todd Radom, same, right?
Yeah.
2 great guys, been in the business for a long time. They did sports design. I did not consider that sports design. It almost seems like it's flipped now to where if you make graphics, you're a sports designer. And you're like, if you're a sports branding guy, are they even calling you a sports designer at that point, right? But one of the things you always did, which I thought was cool, was like you really came from that web side. And I've always been kind of, and you're multidisciplinary as well. And I've been multidisciplinary. And I've kind of had these paths in my career where I've been like super hardcore making graphics and branding and that kind of thing. But then I would go in these deep trenches for a while in my career of being just interactive design or just product design. And I'm in one of those right now with where I'm at with my company now. Like I have been super focused on digital product, user interface, user experience, how things work. I'm kind of like trying to explore motion a little bit. There's some of these new tools out there. Let's say like one of them is called Rive, RIVE. And it has something that's a state machine. And basically they're trying to take, so they're trying to, usually when you do motion on the web, like post flash animation on the web, a lot of times it was like video. And so like in order to design, like the animators would design something and then it would be up to the developers to sort of translate that into code.
Yeah.
And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And now with this Rive thing, like you can do all the animation and you can have states. And it's like, okay, I have a button and I want it to animate on click, or I want it to do this on hover. And to me, like this is the new wave of like interactive design. And these are things I'm sort of exploring now. But I did want to say that was one of the things I always admired about you is you sort of really came from that web world, and it almost seemed like we were sort of, if that was your thing, it almost seemed like you're kind of an outsider in the sports design world too, because a lot of the people doing the social media stuff don't understand things like accessibility on like how big the fonts are and like all of these things. Don't think about that, or just even colors, right? Like, dude, that contrast is not going to work. Like,
like I said, I just finished this huge project at ESPN, and I don't even think they understand the accessibility part of this yet, because working at Yale and then working at the state of Connecticut, everything's accessibility. We were working on these graphics and we were using accessibility a little bit. There's some cool tools that we would take 2 logos and then we'd have the background colors. So like, let's say the Yankees are playing the Red Sox. Well, who gets the navy blue? Who gets the red? And then are the red and the blue, so the home team gets primary choice, secondary team gets secondary choice. And then there's a machine to see accessibility wise if there's enough of a difference there. And what's cool is that I developed a system that they had options afterwards so that it wasn't an opinion. It was based on accessibility. But that stuff's going to get even further and further, where teams and colleges are going to probably have to change their color palettes because of accessibility.
Oh, I
they
agree.
don't even have that conversation. Like, I don't even think the sports world knows that's coming.
No, I don't think they do either, and I don't think they realize that it's going to be it's probably going to be legislated in a way.
Oh yeah,
right?
Like, that's what I said. I go, you better do it now because one day someone's going to write a law, and then you're all effed.
And there are 100% like some of these sort of shark lawyers out there that search for big brands websites, and they would be like, "Oh, these colors aren't accessible. I'm going to sue these guys."
Oh yeah. Well, I'll do you one better. Working at the state of Connecticut, I didn't realize this, but there's a cottage industry on. There are tons of lawyers and all of these people that wait for the government. Like some politician comes up with some like feel good law that makes them look good for 5 seconds, right? So they write this law and whatever it is. Well, most times they write that law knowing full well there's almost no way to enact it because it's the state or the federal government and it takes them 100 years to do anything. So they wait for the law to go in, and then they immediately just keep suing them until it doesn't. And they make millions and millions. Yeah. So to your point, all of that's coming. And they're going to go after these schools and these endowments, and they're going to go after all of it. And what's funny is the schools themselves probably have all that on the education side, but they're not looking at the colors of the branding for the sports teams and realizing like this green. Like we had an issue at ESPN, and everyone thinks logos are simple or whatever, but the way the logo world is based is you have two types of logos on a website if you're a sports team, on light and on dark. And if you have that, well, is red light or is it dark?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know.
I studied color theory in college. I'm sure you had color classes.
Yeah.
There is no answer. It's unquantifiable. What is light? What is dark? There's no quantify. You know, what can you quantify? You can quantify on black, and you can quantify on white. And then after that, you can just say primary 1, primary 2, and then that way it's up to the teams, and then they can decide what they do. And look, there's this. I'm thinking Texas State, for example. Go look up Texas State. It's a really, really dark maroon or burgundy on a really, really dark gold. And it's just mud. And there's no way. That's the first one off the top of my head where I'm like, there's no way this will ever fly. I mean, there are versions of gold out there that are bright. And there's
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, this is crazy.
It is crazy. And, in our local high school here I designed years ago, I went out of my way because maroon's another weird color. That maroon could be brown, maroon could be purple, maroon could be red. I specifically found the lightest version of maroon in Division I, which I believe is Arizona State, and I made sure they picked that because the other colors were gray and black, and I'm like, okay, that's mud.
So that's the other interesting thing too. I went to a college that was a maroon college, Eastern Kentucky University Colonels. They were maroon, and depending on which manufacturer they're using their uniforms. I mean, that's the other thing. Like you can't, like they're probably closer to Mississippi State's maroon.
Because, they're both,
But if you weren't under like whatever the Mississippi State contract was at the time, like you weren't touching that. So like if let's say you were Nike and they didn't have a school that was in that.
State now is Nike, you're Adidas, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think we are Adidas.
So Adidas maroon is purple and Nike maroon is red.
Yeah.
It's almost Nike maroon is almost the exact same color as the Washington Redskins burgundy.
In all honesty, there should probably be like a like a standard, like an industry standard, like this is maroon, right? Whether it's Nike, whether it's whatever. And then maybe you have like variations of it, like 10 shades either way. But that would make things so much easier. Whereas like right now, people are just creating these custom colors, and like Pantone went all paid subscription now or whatever. because
Talk
it's
about
like,
slicing your throat. Like,
yo,
I'll
dude.
never look at Pantone. Like, all right,
No,
you're dead.
and so there was
I'm
some
never paying
guy.
for that.
I found some artist, some digital artist, who literally created every Pantone color, and renamed it so that
Yeah.
you could just like download his little file and like open it up in your Illustrator.
Yeah.
You basically have them, but it's like an offshoot. Like nobody's gonna
Yeah,
pay
how
for
can
that.
you? I don't understand how you can't own color.
Yeah,
And the other
it's
part too is you want to hear really crazy is working with the NHL, putting together their logo brand thing. In all of their style guides, they don't have any hex colors. They only
that's
use
crazy.
CMYK. It's
That's crazy.
freaking insane. I gotta believe 80% of all of their stuff has to be seen digitally.
Yeah.
Has to be, right? In this day and age, it has to be 80.
You should be at this point. You should be hex first.
Exactly.
Like,
that's what I said. I mean, at this point, who cares about CMYK? Just print the hex in CMYK.
Right.
That's basically what I do anyway. Who cares?
Yeah.
Very rarely. This isn't like 20 years ago where you would print out the CMY, the RGB, and you'd be like, "Oh my God, the print looks terrible." They should get rid of CMYK. CMYK is like worthless in this world because it's not the standard anymore.
Right.
So if it's off, who cares?
Right.
I mean, maybe if you're like, I guess you're.
I think people even expect print to look bad now.
Yeah,
in a way, you're just like, oh yeah, of course it's print. It's not because you're so used to seeing things on screen with vibrant colors that can't be printed at all. You know,
unless you're these people, and God love them. I don't know who gets the budget, but if you're these people that get a nice foil on a thing, which we're as designers, we're like, oh, there's foil on here, but. In reality, other than that, how many times does that even come up? Who cares?
Oh, dude, and you have to press check those things and all that, right? I mean, it's like to be able to do. I would wonder how many designers in house, let's say at like universities that are creating things at for print, have ever even done a press check. I don't think you even do those anymore. Like
I wonder,
because you don't have time. There's no time. You have to crank stuff out like constantly, super quick.
No, I remember press checks being so important, but I wonder. No,
So my first job out of school, I also mentioned it earlier, Host Communications. We printed the official game programs of the NCAA tournament. So Final Four NCAA tournament. I remember we stayed all night at a printer. Like we literally did an all-nighter because the games were wrapping up this night, and then they had to update the print, right? Because there's like you had like your features and stuff, which were always in every issue. And then you had, I can't remember if the terminology was like the shell. I don't remember exact terminology. Like something was called the shell. I don't know if that was the part that like changed or not. But then you had the part that changed, which were these black and white pages, which were the teams that were playing. Right. So you're throwing in this team's roster and this team's roster. And that's what we had to go to the presses for, because it was like, hey, we got to make sure everything's right and it's coming out right, because we've got we've got a whole empty section of the middle of the magazine that needs to be printed. We got to make sure the teams are right. And this team just won, so they're moving on. The designs were done, but it was like you had to make sure you had to get the right PDFs in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Or I remember, I don't know if I'm dating myself, but I remember like going and like one of the colors was just every print of it was just off by like, a quarter of an inch or something.
Yeah.
Like the pinks are off, and you're like, the what? And it was such a big production. Print was so.
Oh, I hated it. No, like looking back, it's so stressful to think if you're like a young person having to get into that, because I actually designed the game programs for Florida State, right? And they vary just like, what is it like? What do they call their colors? Like,
gold and yes.
They have a specific name for it, right?
It's cool actually.
Yeah, but anyway, I got the gold.
Garnet and gold.
Yes, I got the gold wrong, and it printed badly, and they had to reprint these covers. And I remember they were throwing a big fit about it, and I was like just out of school, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, man. Why'd you give me Florida State? Like, like you should have given me somebody nobody's ever heard of.
That's so funny. When I first started, I started at this tiny little shop in Peekskill, New York. Do you remember the Facts of Life?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You remember the beginning where they had that building and then it said Facts of Life?
Yeah.
And they said, we're in Peekskill, New York. Well, they didn't film there, but that building was in Peekskill, and we built our studio in that building, which used to be a school. It was pretty funny. Yeah. Anyway, it was it was like slave labor. We made like $16,000 out of school, and like none of us had any money, and we'd have to go to like Wendy's, and we'd go to the dollar menu, and we'd all pull out whatever we had in our pockets,
Yeah.
and we would just build a pile of like dollar menu items, and we would all forage over it, like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they paid us nothing, but they gave us the biggest clients, and I was like, "Are you sure?" Like, we were doing Cartoon Network, I was doing MTV, I was doing the first day I did the Zamboni logo, like. They're like, yeah, it's yours. And I'm like, you're just giving me this stuff. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And by the way, they're charging, they probably billed me out like we were in Manhattan.
As opposed to now you've got some 15-year-old designing like the biggest athletic brand in in college athletics or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's part of digital, right? You can mess up and it's gone.
Yeah.
Like, so you can give that stuff to those kids and, hey, you screwed up, we'll just delete the tweet.
Oh, do you know how many? Yeah, you know how many misspellings that made the print that I made mistakes on, and it happens all the time because I try to tell people, and I don't know if you see it the same way, but I'm like, first of all, not that I'm a great grammar person anyway, but when you look at a design, you just see shapes. Yeah. I'm not looking at the words. Right. I'm looking at the shapes. Like, oh, that H looks good there, and I'm seeing that. But I didn't notice there's no T in front of the H, or there's You're just it's weird.
Especially if it's a middle letter, especially right. You're just like, no, you only look at the first and last letter. I think there's like even a study on that where it's like they mix up the middle of the words, but as long as the first and last letter are correct, you can still read it.
Yeah, I think if you start the first three letters or something like that, I's and E's, any of those, they always disappear. Yeah. I always forget the rule. I before E or E before I know it's I before E is the song, but then I'm like, is that always the case? So whenever it's an E before I,
it's like I before E except after C or something like that.
Sometimes Y. Yeah. But like rain, REIGN, right?
Yeah.
That's not in that song, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Who the hell knows? They're not paying me to spell. I know that.
But I used to design. I would design. For a few years, I did work for Slam magazine, which it was a dream gig. I mean, I grew up reading Slam. I was such a basketball nerd.
That was a great magazine.
And I did the print publications for it. I like sometimes full issues. It would be like, hey, the creative director would be like, hey man, I've got this other thing I'm working on. I need you to work on this full issue. And I would take the full issue, and it would have to be done like quickly too. Like the time was nuts, like less than 2 weeks for the design. And we're talking like 64 pages or something, and like then there's ads, and like sometimes I'm designing without the story. Like sometimes it's like the guy is writing the story as we speak. So you're going to have to do the design based on here's what the story is going to be about. And then sometimes you would get the story and you're like, this is like 17 paragraphs too long. You guys told me this was like 2 pages. Like I got to redesign this whole thing.
I had so many cases like that. One of my first jobs was I was in charge of a women's newspaper, and it was like a monthly. And they're like, "Here," I was like, "I don't do this," and I didn't know anything about like Quark ads, and then people sending them to me. And then
Quark! Oh, good night. That's like
and
the
worst. They giving it me on zip disks and all this nonsense, and then
and
then later, like when I was at that place, I was doing Bob's Big Boy.
Yeah. Yeah,
see, I didn't know it growing up. They're not out in New York. But I was in charge of the Bob's Big Boy comic book where the guy next to me drew it and I was just coloring it. And then one thing I had to do at the end was this like top 10 question, A, B, C, D. And I would write the jokes for them.
Yeah.
And one time, and I didn't know this, but I looked it up and like in some language or something, the word gymnasium means naked, right? I didn't think anything of it. The guy wrote Bob like he wrote the little character. Was it the Bazooka Joe guy? Whatever in there running, and they got banned in the Midwest.
That's so. It's crazy. Like even hearing you refer to it as Bob's Big Boy is weird for me because around here like it's just called Big Boy. Like,
funny.
Yeah,
I think
I've
Bob's
like
Big Boy is the Michigan version or something.
Okay. Yeah.
There's none of it here. Actually, we went and saw Austin Powers in the movie theater because the Big Bob statue at the end.
Oh
That's
yeah.
how we saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would do all these things and write jokes, and I'm like, I don't know any jokes,
Yeah.
but they were purposely bad jokes, and it
But
was
dude,
funny.
honestly, if you think about it though, like I've always, I think I remember working with some people that were just like, I just do this. Like, I'm not even going to try to do that thing. Right.
Yeah.
And I've always been somebody that's like, look, man, you didn't write the copy. I'm going to write a headline.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you have
Replace
to
it.
just do that.
Yeah.
That's, you
Yeah.
gotta
Replace it.
move. You gotta keep going. And like,
Yeah.
even now AI, man, I'm like really like, I know there's like tons of, pushback on it and all this stuff. But, I just read this article the other day from this guy, Brian Collins, who runs this Collins branding agency or whatever. And I agreed with most of the things he was saying. Is like the best stuff coming out of AI right now still comes from people that know what they're doing. Like it
Yeah.
comes from people that are creative, that
Yeah.
know an art period, know a style, know a lighting that you're trying to hit,
Yeah.
as opposed to like some random person that's like, make me a painting of this or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like I see these 3D. In fact, I would venture to say that some of the best stuff coming from AI image making right now are people that already know and have mastered things like Cinema 4D.
Yeah.
Like those people are creating crazy stuff in AI on like that you'll see on Instagram, and it's like, it's still their ideas. It's still their, at the end of the day, I feel like and I saw something on LinkedIn about this recently, but it's almost like the new position of the future for people that do the like design work and creative work is like creative director is the main thing,
Yes.
right? Because like at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you're shaping all these things together. Who knows what the medium is? I mean,
Yeah.
we truly don't know. Like prompt engineering, the two top jobs right now I think on like Boardroom, which is like Kevin Durant's sports business, like publication or whatever, is like AI engineer and AI prompting, right? Like those are, if you know how to if you know how to describe what you want as a creative director in a way that is like very, very descriptive, you can create some amazing stuff. And
Oh yeah.
there was something about, I saw something about trying to explain programming to a kid, like computer programming to a kid, and it was like the guy had like a plate, and he had a butter knife, and he had peanut butter, and he had bread, and he was like, I want you to tell me how to make this peanut butter sandwich. And they were like, put the put the bread on the put the peanut butter on the bread. And it was like they would take the peanut butter and put it on the bread bag.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, no, you have to describe every step.
Yes.
Open bread bag.
Yeah.
Grab piece of bread. Pull. And so like if you get that detailed with AI, you can blow stuff out of the water, dude. It's crazy.
So there's a great podcast. I mean, I'm calling it great, but there was a great podcast I just did with Chris Desi. He is a marketing guy. He's on Fox 5 New York, up in New York. It's the local Fox thing, but he has been like a great AI person. You should listen to it.
Yeah, I saw you post that, and
Yeah.
I meant to listen to that. That's one I for sure
So
want to listen to.
one of the things we talked about, and it actually came up today or this week, I have a new freelance customer I'm dealing with, and I was referencing this exact same thing. And what we were talking about was he's explaining how you can build an entire agency as a one-man agency using it. And
oh, for sure, yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and I was like, wow, it just started crossing some T's and dotting some I's, and I was like, really starting to think about all the things it could do. For example, he was explaining, like, if I told someone to go build a website using AI, everyone's in panic because they're like, oh, it's cutting jobs. But then I'm like, yeah, but just like your peanut butter analogy, it's like, make me a website, and it's going to make you a generic AI website. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if I go in there and I start uploading my PSD files and I'm designed, now it's cutting away the things I can't do. And that's really basically what he said. It's just filling in the holes for the manpower you don't have.
Dude,
and what I said,
that's exactly how I use it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, which I think you'll like. I was talking to the freelance boss that I have, or client, I should say, and he came to me because he had been going to India, and he'd been doing the work, and the work wasn't terrible, but it wasn't hitting the mark, and he was like, it's just not hitting the mark, and I said, going to India is the exact same thing as using AI. If I go to India and say, I need an ad with this font, with a button, with whatever, India will come back and say, here's your ad with this font, your button, whatever. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And then you're going to write them back. 24 hours later, you'll hear back. And then it's this tug of war of India will only do what you tell them to do.
Oh, yes.
With great detail. So if you are a creative person, you could, with great detail, get something out of that. But that's like the AI. If I'm in control, the AI isn't going to fill in the blanks. I'm the blank filler.
100%.
That's what it is.
100%.
And no one, And
that's what I don't know why people are so afraid, because I mean, I can see if you're like, if you're just like sort of robotic in how you do things, like why you might be afraid. But if you're a creative person, even, you know, I was reading something the other day where a guy was like, barbers and like lawn businesses and people are starting to use their own like agency to build things with AI for their business. And like, I think that's a great thing, man. I mean, honestly, and you were talking about India, right? Like there was this company that I used to use to cut things out. If I had like 50 things that need to be clipped in Photoshop, nobody wants to sit there and do that. I mean, I hate that stuff. So it's like, I would send that stuff to this company in India and they would do it in like 24 hours. And if I didn't exactly specify what I wanted, like sometimes the cutouts would be bad. I'll be like, oh, you didn't cut out in between the arm. Like, why would I not want this part cut out? That doesn't make any sense. But they'll do exactly what you say. So, like for me with AI, I use it as like almost like a personal assistant / like new version of Google / partly development help. You know, I was designing something in Figma one time, and I'd made these animations using Figma animations and built out this prototype. And now I had to pass this over to code. And, you know, to talk to the developer, I've got to figure, like, they're asking questions that I don't know the answers to. So I just go to straight up AI and I'd look at the Figma and I'm like, okay, in Figma, if I have a prototype that has, you know, this animation and these settings, what does that look like in code? And then boom, it spits out the code and I hand it to the guy and he tests it and it's perfect. I'm like, that's what it's for me, right? Finding that in between, bridging that gap.
Well, for me, I was thinking, I've tried to learn Figma. I don't like it. I know I'm supposed to live in there. And I don't want to. But that's the other part of, maybe I don't have to. I'm thinking about it now.
I don't think you will. I really don't think you will, man. I think
just
Figma
do what I'm doing in Photoshop, and then I'll be like, all right, by the way, make this in Figma.
Yeah, like in all honesty, if you think about interfaces and user experiences, and even some people are getting away from the word user experience. Like I saw recently, are you familiar with Duolingo, the language learning? It's like a website. It's got like this green owl illustration. It's like this animated character, and anyway, it's kind of gamified. It's like if you want to learn Spanish, you take Duolingo, and they got other things, you know, other languages on there and things. And it's sort of gamified, like the owl moves from like place to place on this like map looking thing as you start moving. And then if you stop using it for a while, the owl will like send you messages to be like, hey man, do you miss me? Or like, you know, stuff like this. And the owl's pretty mad at me, honestly, at times, because I'm just like completely ignore him for a while. But anyway, so they have actually renamed their design aspect of things to product experience. Because it's like, hey, we don't actually know what our product is going to be, and we don't even know like what the users are. But it's like we want, like, we're designing the product experience, whatever that looks like, right?
I just think that, but it's funny. Like that's one of those like, that's like a marketing thing where you're like,
yeah,
we don't call it
is.
this, and you're like, what are we gaining by calling it one or the other? Like,
yeah. Well, I think it is weird though. So like, I sort of sit in this world where there are product people and there are brand people, and they're always at odds with each other, because one is like the product's the most important, and some people are like the brand's the most important, right? And I would venture to say that right now today, that like Nike's like if you wear a pair of Jordans, they are not comfortable, dude. They're awfully uncomfortable. But there's like a brand around it, you know, and people buy them for that. And I'm like, dude, I can't wait. These things are brutal. Whereas like I just bought these, I bought these things that I got an Instagram ad for, and I was kind of doing research on them, and all these NFL players are starting to wear these things called UFOs. Have you heard of these?
No.
They're like these. They call them recovery shoes, and they basically wear them after workouts, and it's like you're walking on clouds. Like it's just super cushiony, very comfortable. I bought a pair of sandals, and they came in the mail today, and I put these things on. They're just straight up black, like, And I'm like, dude, these are like the best things I've ever worn. Like, this is something where the product is amazing, but the brand is like not that amazing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like things are always at odds with one another, where some people are like, oh, it's product experience, and some people are like, no, it's brand experience. And I think it's like a little both, you know?
Well, I think product. I think so. I think that's a misnomer. I think the product experience is the brand.
Yes.
It's all together. Yeah.
All right.
But it's, you know what it is many times, and this goes to what I was going to say earlier, because you and I, we wear a lot of hats. We're not specialized people.
Yeah.
But people that are good at this understand that the product experience has to match the brand. And the brand people the word brand and people that only know about brand is a very limited thing. A product person, to me, is a very curious person. They live it, they breathe it. I am always going to be a product person, but that doesn't mean I just am on this side, because to me, the product experience is the brand.
Yeah.
Because to your point, like, yes, the brand of Jordan is cool, but it's also part of the brand that they're very uncomfortable.
It's like,
they are.
It's like, hey, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe Jordan's like, I'm such a rugged dude, man. I'm rocking these shoes that are trash. And I'm balling out.
That goes to the bigger question I have, which is, this is the product person in me. Why do they have to make Jordan 1s with really bad, uncomfortable shoes?
Yeah.
You could slip into that and make something better. It doesn't have to match the technology of 1984. You could easily, and they did that for a while. I don't know if it's still the case. Remember Chuck Taylors did that, where they're like, we're going to make Chuck Taylors. But
we rocked those in high school for my basketball team, I think. They were like the new version of Chucks with like a fixed sole.
Those. Yeah. No, they have Chuck Taylors that have
good insoles.
And they don't look like, remember they had the cool ones that they were wearing? Yeah, because Kentucky wore them in the national championship.
The jean short. The jean things,
what a white trash tuxedo that was.
Listen, I actually to this day I hated them. I hated those things, man. I might be one of the only ones. I like, now that Mark Pope is back, people are like, "Oh, we should bring back the denim things," and I was like, "Dude, when those came out, those were brutally bad, man.
Brutal.
They were awful."
I worked at Jerry Cosby's famous sports store at Madison Square Garden, and they had those. And it was one of the few places pre-internet, and it had all the authentic stuff. And I was just looking at these things. I'm like, what in God's name
they're
are
brutal,
these
man.
Oh, yeah.
They're brutal.
So brutal. Oh,
but they were Converse, We were rocking Converse at the time. And I think within we went to Nike, and I was so excited when we were going Nike. Actually, some of the stuff prior to Converse was pretty cool. It was like this brand called Apex, and they had like all these like cat scratches on the shorts. Like they were making some really cool stuff.
We had all that stuff in there.
Yeah.
Apex was a great jacket company in the 90s. That's like a great jacket company.
Yeah.
But I think we're skipping. There was between Converse and Nike, wasn't there a brand that was kind of like they were doing weird things? Was it either Starter or
I'm not sure.
Or was it Logo Athletic or something? Or something weird.
Probably like Russell Athletic, maybe.
Russell. Oh no, Russell's always like the most generic. Like, yeah, Russell's just was like stamped. There's one template. You wear the template. That's the end of it. Either there's a stripe on the left or the right, or on both.
So basketball jersey archive. Let's see what this says with like the how far we go back. So, dude, they've been
maybe it was just Converse was just so ugly. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh, come on, man! This is such a cop out. They go from 1933 to 34 as unknown, and then they don't start back up again until 04, 05. Dude, you're missing like a huge.
Yeah. Then why even have it?
Yeah. Like, that's like a huge chunk of people.
The 90s in general is probably what everybody wants to know.
Oh, dude. Yeah. 90s are. I'm actually noticing kids now, like around like my son's soccer team, like they're wearing like big baggy jeans, like almost skateboarder jeans, like like all that's coming back.
Everything's 90s. It's so crazy. I mean, yeah, it's funny to see. Yeah, oversized jeans are coming back. Where I'm like, really, why are we doing this? Like, although I'm sure they don't wear like 50 pounds the way they used to. Remember how heavy
like
those damn things
those
were?
Jinkos or whatever.
Oh my god, they were like 30 pounds, and you see this girl weighs like 60 pounds wearing a 30-pound pair of jeans.
Yeah.
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 The '90s were a cool time, though. I'll
I
always
agree.
go back to that. I think
I
that was a great time too.
You ever see those talking about AI, but like on Instagram, sometimes I'll run across these like you're a kid waking up in 93 and it's like just like a first person perspective of like all these AI videos of like you're walking into your like kitchen and there's like Wheaties sitting there like it's like an old 90s
Oh
car
yeah.
outside, like it just sort of takes you back and it plays that like that track that you hear on everything, which is like those kids in the background and like some kind of music playing, like just this weird nostalgic like
Oh
thing.
yeah. It's funny because when you think of the world pre-internet, it doesn't seem different, but it is. Like it's quieter. It's, like you said, you're
Yeah,
reading the back of the Wheaties box, or
yeah,
I'm reading the sports section
yeah, yeah.
because it's Sunday morning.
I do feel like though. Do you remember that? So there was that initial time where the internet was starting to get a little more mainstream, and like I grew up without the internet at my house. Like we didn't have a connection, and then eventually, like when I think maybe my senior year in high school, we got a connection, but I would have to go to my friend's house to download things off like LimeWire or
Yeah.
whatever, like stuff like that. But do you remember when it kind of hit mainstream and it was like 2002 ish, 2003? And then it was like Flash and like really cool things being made on the internet. They were like different. You had like what did you call them? Like they were like message boards, but they were called something else. Like so you would. I remember this thing like Hoops TV. I would go to it. It was like all this street ball stuff and
Oh yeah.
and I just felt like the internet was so cool back then because it
Oh
was
yeah.
it was it was these
Yeah.
communities in all these various places, and now like then social media came, and then like social media became the internet, and it was like everybody goes to the same place. You didn't have these like little sub tier communities. But I do feel like we're kind of venturing back a little bit. I'm starting to see some even some websites or some various things being made that seem like cool again. Seem like creativity is coming back
I hope so.
into some of that stuff.
I think, I think they crushed creativity on purpose. I think like 2014 was a pivotal year, and maybe it's just for me, 2014 specifically, but I think to your point, I was working during those years. I started an internet company in '98. So
Mm-hmm.
it was so exciting. And then I worked at an agency in Manhattan, 2000 to 2003. I mean, it was an exciting time. And, we're doing Godiva and we're doing Ragu and all this fun stuff. Like, there were no rules. We were figuring it out. And then, like, when the iPhone came out, that was the pinnacle of like, holy cow, we're changing your life.
Yeah.
We're going to decide if this is a good movie, and we're all going to fill out Rotten Tomatoes, and we're going to decide, what's good or what's bad. We're not going to be told what to do anymore. And then finally, around 2014-ish, they said, no, you do not get to decide. The people don't get to decide anymore.
Yeah.
And oh, you want your Rotten Tomatoes? We'll give it to you, but we're going to lie. And it was probably one of the first newer crappy Star Wars that they had the audacity to give 100 to. That was the worst movie I've ever seen. That probably was the jump the shark moment where I'm like, all right, that's where crowdsourcing is dead because the people don't decide anymore. And then little by little, they just kept taking it back and keeping it like comment sections. And all right, we'll have a comment section, but we're going to decide what the comments are.
We're going to police it.
Yeah, everything was taken away. So now we're down to something that was even a lot less more exciting than even pre-internet.
So, and I would say this too.
Choices.
Like, I would say this too. All the people that are hating on AI, right? And they're like, "Oh, well, creativity, it's killing creativity, and this, that, and the other." Well, right now, like these big agencies are basing everything off of data anyway. So that's why all the car ads you see, you'll see something happen in like the Super Bowl, and you're just like, "Well, this is just some weird, nostalgic, feel-good stuff, but it's not creative." Like it's boring. Like,
well, that's the point now. I mean, if you really want to dig in deep, is I think it's all on purpose. They don't want to come out with the next great car. There is no next.
There's
great
fear
thing.
involved. Yeah,
there is. They don't want to because if somebody can come out tomorrow and come up with the next great car, then all the money they invested and all the things that they did are ruined.
Yeah.
So it's controlling growth and it's controlling. They'd rather have monotone, crappy music and monotone, awful movies for everyone than risk having everything go out on a limb and then, oh shit, we're all behind. Like, think about like Warrant and Cherry Pie and all of those things, right? one day that whole billions of dollars were lost because Smells Like Teen Spirit came out and it ruined that. You'll never see that again. They don't allow that guy with the new widget or girl with the new widget to come up and disrupt anything.
Yeah.
That's not an accident.
They'll
And that's
always
why we
fall
have
in line.
analytics,
Yeah.
by the way. The analytics are what keep us here.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Analytics are saying we shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Well, who writes the analytics? Like I was talking about even with AI is, I'm going to maybe blow your mind a little bit, is, yeah, we're relying on AI. And right now it's raw, so it feels good. But what are we going to do when the AI, and we're saying AI, I use Grok and sometimes ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I don't know
I'm all over the place. Yeah. Yeah.
But all of a sudden, Grok, oh, well, Coca-Cola gave me $4 billion. So when I mention soda, it's always going to be Coca-Cola. If I tell you how to make
concerning.
this, there's no difference between somebody paying tons of money to influence, because all AI comes from the one person that wrote it.
Yeah.
So
that is very concerning. Yeah. I've read articles about that, and I do not trust this Sam Altman guy. Like, he for sure seems like he's a potentially evil dude, like ready to take over the world. But
what's to stop them paying like they pay Google for placement? Nothing.
I think it will happen. I mean, I think if it's not already,
I'm sure it is already, because think of it too, is every company has their own AI and every company already has their business relationships. It's like everyone is either Coke or Pepsi anyway, right?
Yeah. Because
Coke or Pepsi make sure that you pick one or the other. Hey everyone, I'm sorry. This is an abrupt end to the podcast with Adam Martin. As I was looking over the recorded work, and it was great, Adam's microphone and camera just didn't finish recording. So we went on to talk about AI. We went on to talk about design, accessibility, and things you would learn as you are diving deeper into AI. And it was a great conversation. Loved having Adam on. I wish we could have finished it the right way, but I'm sure we'll have Adam on again. It was a great conversation. Thanks again, Adam, and I hope you guys really enjoyed the podcast today. Have a great day.